Well, hello. This is Dr. Joseph Martin once again. I've just gotten back from a wonderful hike in the wintry alpine meadows of the Highlands here in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Beautiful day here in paradise. Come visit Victoria sometime. The topic for our introductory discussion today is the essence of Dr. Carl Gustav Jung. He is a man for our time, and he will be a man for the next 5, 10, 15 centuries of our human existence here on planet Earth. I'd like to share my personal story with Dr. Jung and how he's changed my life and how I was able to model him in order to have a spectacular life for myself. First off, we need to say that there are a lot of biographies on Jung. All of his materials are available. I myself have over 500 books written about Carl Jung, and I have been for over 40 years a Jungian psychotherapist here in Canada. And his whole life and his essence has meant ever so much to me. It's clear to say that Carl Jung is a man for our time for many reasons. He's gone against the stream of everything that our society has been doing. He's a scientist, a spectacular scientist, and a mystic. And in a time when our society is making people more homogenized and zombie like and narcissistic and lacking any sense of identity, Carl Jung has gone in the opposite direction and gone inwards into his heart and found his deep cultural and personal and spiritual psychological roots. This is the most important thing for anyone in our society to be doing at this time. With all the loneliness and the depression and the sense of anomie and boredom and lack, only some kind of an understanding of Jung's essence and what he's brought as an archetypal model to our society will give you the sustenance and the clear directions you need to follow for yourself. This introductory video actually is just one in a series on Carl Jung, and what I have to share is perhaps quite unique in the world of psychology and Jungiana in the world, in that I have had a personal relationship with Dr. Jung in many past lives, which I shall uncover in future videos, and also in this life through his personal direct guidance. Like Jung, I had a very challenging childhood. All my reflections were going inside, and none of it were really going outwards into the outer world. And this is, of course, how one does find the self. I have had 3 Jungian analyses over my decades. I was, in fact, the first person in Canada to be analyzed by a Jungian analyst. So, therefore, the first analysand here in Canada. My first Jungian analyst was Fraser Boa, the older brother of Marion Woodman, whom I also worked with for 3 years. I worked with Fraser for 3 years and Marion for 3 years, and then Dr. Roger Woolger. I'm eminently grateful and thankful for them and their guidance and their direction in helping me individuate into the man that I'm still becoming now. Very humbly thankful for them. But let's talk about Dr. Carl Gustav Jung. His background and interests in so many things, including early in his career, mediums, psychic phenomena, which he did his doctorate on, and also the shadow side of all the things that he knew in his Swiss culture, and then, of course, living through 2 world wars and all the horrendous dreams that he speaks of in his Memories, Dreams, Reflections, his own autobiography. This shows a man of incredible sensitivity and also a man of incredible, indomitable strength and ruthlessness, and scientifically looking at all his dreams and his unconscious, not only his personal subconscious, but all the collective unconscious that was coming to him. He is the one man who brought the unconscious back to us in a scientific way here in the 20th century. And along with other great psychiatrists of his time, he actually forged much deeper, much wider, much higher than any one of them did, or all of them together, in fact. Now, we all are very familiar with his notions of archetypes, symbols, psychological complexes that rule us from the unconscious, and family complexes. But I was so interested, in many ways, of course, training as a Jungian psychotherapist. I didn't do all the final analyses in Zurich, but I was in Zurich and other places in North America. I understood that the benefit to myself was immense when I was going to be undertaking all my own Jungian analyses. It allowed me to go to the bottom of my personal unconscious and also to the bottom of the collective unconscious, to a place even beyond where Jung suggested we go, to the place of the no self. And there is where I found myself, in the infinite eternal soul that I am. And all of us can do the very same. My first doctoral thesis at the University of Toronto in the anthropology department in the 1970s and 80s was actually an analysis of Jung's use of archetypes, dominant symbols, and universal complexes that involve families and entire cultures and nations and ethnicities to understand the entire civilizational evolution of all the civilizations on planet Earth from time immemorial. This thesis had been written, was supposedly going to be accepted, but at the last minute people said, no, we cannot, because Jung is simply a mystic. So I did do a second thesis, which we'll talk about a little differently another time, which is an ethno-history of the Gansadagi or Mohawk village of Oka. The fact that I was not able to obtain a doctorate degree on Carl Jung's ideas says volumes about where our science is, and science is not at the university level. However, that's for another time. As a result, though, all that material that I garnered and researched and wrote is now going to be 7 volumes on the history of all world civilizations, based on the control factors that archetypes rule. Archetypes and dominant symbols rule all of society's cultures, religions, institutions, and entire civilization worldview and ethos. And only when we know how they do this unconsciously and magnetically are we aware of what kind of control societies play over us as individuals. This is essential. This is going to cover millions of years of human history. But the importance, going back to our time here in the 20th and 21st centuries, is that this is a time of narcissistic zombies on the planet. All the institutions, the politics, the economics, these so-called religions of money that have dominated ourselves and told us what to believe, how high to jump, and what to do with our time and our precious lives, in fact, has been an anathema and a suicidal psychological boredom for most people on the planet, with their loneliness and their depression. The one thing, again, as I say, Carl Jung was swimming upstream when all the collective unconscious was going downstream towards war and hatred and murder and ever increasing fatalistic fascist control of people's minds and thoughts and actions and wills. Jung, on the other hand, like a salmon, was swimming upstream with all sorts of light and new life and rebirth to show people that they can become their own selves through individuation. And this is, in fact, what my essence of Carl Jung is about. I do know many of Carl Jung's past lives. I've been researching this for 50 years. He and I have many conversations all the time. In fact, when I left the university permanently in 1988, instead of staying as a permanent professor, Carl Jung came to me over a period of 2 weeks and told me that my future actually was doing clinical work and research work with hundreds and thousands, as it turns out, of clients and workshop attendees when I started my Academy of World Psychology and Creative Arts in Toronto back in the 1980s and 1990s. Carl Jung has been a steadfast friend for me from the spirit world. He speaks with me daily. And many of these things, of course, are unknown and even unheard of in the Jungian world and certainly in psychology. So stay tuned because I think you'd be very interested to know what Carl Jung thinks about our society now. As you know, he lived from 1875 to 1963, and just in the last few years before his passing into spirit, he was quite aware of the dire circumstances we are in now for a possible and very probable Third World War. However, as Carl and I say to each other, the Third World War is already on. And where is that? It's in the heart of every individual on the planet. The split between the ego and the spirit, or the self, the higher self, which is his foremost psychological spiritual principle, the split between the conscious and the unconscious, the split between the narcissistic ego and the soul, which is hidden and buried and lost inside the body and the heart. All these things create conflict and compression and tension within the individual, and then within the family and the neighborhood, the community, the nation, and the world, that can lead, unless we do something very sincerely soon, to avoid another catastrophe with another nuclear war. So all of this, obviously, I'm saying this in a very lighthearted way, but we all know that this is true. I wish you well. This is going to be an exciting trip when you come back and join us for further explorations of the essence of Carl Jung and how he can model for all of us what it means to be a true human, open-hearted, spiritual, clear, psychologically, scientifically oriented individual who can come forward with strength, courage, devotion, action, love, and support, because knowledge is power, and when you know who you are, you can change the world. Like myself, Carl Jung was in a prison of his society. The society and culture forced him to somehow turn his carbon into diamond and move all that energy totally inward until he found deeper and deeper and higher the truth of how to find yourself, your original higher self. Like Nelson Mandela or any of the other great people, or Gandhi, who have been compressed by society with all the ferocious, diabolical kinds of necessity to stop people from becoming free and finding the truth. When that happens to certain individuals, they do end up becoming world changers and visionary leaders for all time. And such a person is Carl Jung. And I hope such a person will become you as you continue your journey of full spiritual psychological individuation. Take care until the next time. Dr. Joseph Martin, be well.